Good morning and welcome to Real Human Design Stories, where we share real-life stories of how human design has helped our guests know themselves on a deep, transformative level. Whether you're joining us live here during Sunday Story Hour in my Facebook group or catching this on your favorite podcast platforms on Monday, you'll be able to find all the details you need in the show notes or the Facebook comments. Human design helps us to differentiate between what is ours and what is conditioning. By knowing and trusting ourselves, we develop deeper voices, deeper, more honest relationships and unlock our true gifts. I'm Kathy Bashanko, and my guest this week is Denise Mathew, a 6'2" emotional manifesting generator, left angle cross of spirit. And I am very excited to be able to talk. I've been a big fan of your transit reports for a while now, your Mandala of Life series, and love your book. So welcome, Denise. I would love if you just say hello and dive right into telling us about how you wound up on this magnificent Human Design Mandala of Life.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here. My story, I think, is probably like a lot of other people's stories. It happened in 2014. And it's very interesting because I have the exact date. It was like about September 15th or 14th, around there, 2014. And a friend of mine, she went to this, I guess it was a psychic fair or something like that, where people would bring all different modalities together. So some people would be doing tarot and so forth. So she saw this person doing this thing called Human Design. And she said, well, there is astrology in it. And I know you love astrology, because I'd been studying astrology for probably about 20 years as a hobby, of course, and really had loved astrology and talked about astrology as much as possible. So she said, there is astrology in it, so you might like it. And so I opened up my iPad and started to do a search, and I found that Karen Curry, that's who I found. And she was sort of my original teacher. And, basically devoured all of her work, went right to the level 4 and thought I was an expert on human design, and just went through the whole path. But I came from a point of trying to be a writer or to break into the writing scene. And I had written a bunch of novels and they hadn't done well. And I guess I was in a position where I was like trying to do everything and not really getting results. And now I see what I was doing. I mean, I'm emotional. So I was basically just jumping on every wagon and doing what felt good in the moment. And then later on, maybe wouldn't feel so good. Even putting books out before they were really kind of finished sometimes, like maybe having another chapter in me, but being so kind of excited to get it out there that I wanted to just go ahead and do it. So that was my journey. And then I felt like I knew everything. And then I started my YouTube channel. That was around when I had my Chiron return. And then I felt like I knew everything. But then there was a really interesting man. His name is Nick Good, and he is a Gene Keys specialist. And we exchanged I did some charts for him, and he did a Gene Key reading for me. It was very interesting. The one thing he said to me, and this is probably about, 5 years ago at least, because I'm approaching 10 years in human design. And he said, you don't really know a lot about human design yet. You just are starting. And I thought that was really funny, because I thought, and then that's when I discovered Ra Uruhu's work. And that was, to me, one of the most pivotal moments of human design for me. And I really haven't looked back. And then it just kind of unfurled to become what it is now, where I took the astrology that I love so much and pulled in the human design, and have done this transits that I've been doing. And that's probably about 5 years I've been doing it, if I look back, or getting close to 5 years where I've been doing transits. And from that came the Mandala of Life, just going around the whole mandala and seeing all the secrets that it holds, because it is incredible, the amount of secrets. Because you don't get that when you get your body graph. You just literally get your body graph. And I think a lot of times we just think, oh, well, that's all there is. And you see this beautiful circle around it. I know I did when I first looked at my human design. I saw this beautiful circle and I said, well, what does that mean? And I didn't really understand it. But when you get into the intricacies of it, it's phenomenal, the secrets and information that you can find within it. So that's my journey.
So when you're saying, just for those who are listening, because some people are, their people might be a week into having they might have just found the human design chart and then found this podcast. But the circle you're talking about is when you look at the body graph where it has the mandala form. which most people now, when they get their body graph, and including if you go to kathybashanko.com and get your body graph from my site, you're going to get the version that has your body graph with the planets on the sides, not the mandala. But it's interesting, when I do my mentoring with clients, I do show them the mandala when I'm explaining, and maybe I'm going to put that in my report, a visual of that, because that's how I explain the message of how human design incorporates all these things, as I talk about the astrology wheel and then how the hexagrams get placed into the different signs of astrology. And that does really make a lot of sense. But, and I just, the whole understanding of the circle of life, right? And that is really beautiful. I do want to go back to when you were saying, I read some of your book. I've only had it for a little while, so I haven't read all of it, but I read the bit where you were talking about how you started as a student of Karen Curry Parker, and I'm a student of hers also. I'm QHD for certified, but I did find human design, traditional human design first. I didn't certify or anything in it because I didn't like the rules they now have, where as far as how you have to only teach it the way they want you to teach it. So I was self-taught for a while in traditional human design, but I, like you were saying, I felt like I knew. In fact, I had people telling me how much I knew about human design, but I wasn't living my human design. I wasn't really integrating it. So that's, so when he told you that you didn't really know much, did that make you dive deeper with that open ajna, undefined ajna of yours? And
I just thought he didn't understand that I knew so much. I think in that point, and I'm not really an elevated person, like I don't think of myself, but for some reason, I felt like very, like I knew what was going on. Like I'd done all the courses, right? It was like my 48 knew it had the depth. And then my 16 said, yeah, I know the stuff. And I just kind of took it, but I don't think I looked at it as negative or anything like that. I thought, well, maybe you don't know something, or maybe you do. But I think I might have leaned more towards that maybe he didn't know. And what I think is some of the most impactful messages that we have are the ones we push away right away, because usually it's the truth, unless it's something that is, it's just not right. That's not who I am. But it was like, maybe he doesn't really know me. Maybe he hasn't really looked at my work enough, and that type of thing. And I thought, that's what I thought. And then I started to work. And I'll be clear, I've never taken a course through International Human Design or anything like that. I've never taken a course. Everything I do, I get from Jovian, and I get it as a self-taught. I've never had a course from any of them. I don't believe in it. I feel like there's a bit of a gate there that they don't allow people to get the information. Like sometimes I just want to buy a book and be able to read it, but I have to take a course in order to get it. And I don't like that. For me, it's like that rule doesn't work for me. So I've always just self-incorporated. And on Saturdays, I do all my cleaning. And that's my day where I basically just listen the whole time to all these audios that I have. And I have quite a library that I've built up over the last couple of years. Spent a lot of money doing it, but really every time I listen to it, it really kind of gives me some other nugget that I need. And I go from rave history to rave cosmology to the variables, to so many different things. But it all comes back to me to the transits and how we can use human design in our world. You can have your type, you can have your design and all those types of things, and those are very important. But to see the energy that is all around you, to see the people interacting, because we are not walking around in a bubble. We are always going to be impacted by everyone around us, and sometimes more than others. And if the energy is a little bit hot and difficult, we could say sometimes, where people are kind of revved up on Mars energy or something, then the reality is that it's nice to know that, rather than getting sucked into a conversation. You get out of a car and maybe someone says, you took my parking spot, I was waiting for it, and they want to get an interaction with you. Well, if you don't know that the energy might be a little fiery that day, you might get really involved in that conversation and take it personally and go into it, as opposed to, okay, let's diffuse this because I know the energy isn't correct right now. It's not a good place to have a conversation where people are actually listening. So let me just disengage from this. And sometimes just disengaging completely from social media, from media of all kinds, from anything. It's this pillow that you can put around yourself to say, okay, right now it's not a good time. It's not like you're fragile, but it is protecting your energy in a way where you feel empowered to keep walking out in the world and keeping the best version of yourself. So this is why I love the transits. And I think that when Rauru, who was doing it, he was doing it from basically the sun. He would throw in a few others, like that he would talk about Mars and Mercury and stuff like that. But then when you look at his cosmology, he brought in Pluto and a lot of the turning of the keys and all the different things. And his biggest conversation was about Pluto and Neptune. And this is where we are right now. In this very moment in 2024, within days, we are having the biggest transformations of planet Earth, where both Neptune and Pluto are moving into gates that they haven't been in a very long time. I mean, Neptune is about 50 to 60 years, and Pluto, well, we would say, well, it's not 50 to 60 years, it's 165 years, but it's been out of play in the global aura for probably about 50, 60 years. And then for Neptune, it is 248 years, or it's been out of the global aura for probably about 150 to 160 years.
Pluto's
Yes.
200, yeah.
248. Yeah, exactly. So these are huge monumental shifts. And we already had that with the gate 60. And I mean, look at how that showed up in the world. And I think that looking at the world events and how we were suddenly constricted, and we had to start to learn to live within the limitations of our life, and to see, okay, this is what I have in the moment. I can't go to Walmart or the grocery store and get everything I want anymore, because it might be sold out, and maybe toilet paper is not going to be there. So what can I do instead? And people bought bidets and, it's silly things like that, but it all kind of came together.
Yeah. So, okay. So I know I have a few friends and people in mind that I think get really confused when we start talking about a lot of different gates and stuff. They're like, how do you remember all that stuff? So if someone is trying to understand the weather of the transits, right? Because it's like the cosmic weather is how I refer to it. It's just affecting everybody, just like a rainy day. And some of us are affected differently by a rainy day than others, right? But how do you explain to people to, as a way to start contemplating the transits?
Well, I mean, I think the keywords are wonderful. I think that if you look at keywords, like just lately, we've been going with Mars has been transiting through the gate 37, and it has different kind of perspectives of the gate 37. Now, if we look at the gate 37, the one word we can always use with that is like community, right? So community, and then you have Mars, which is a fiery energy of pushing ahead, getting things moving very fast. Impatience, of course, is part of it too. There's always the duality. So we could have a community that is getting a little more fiery, more pushing, wanting to have more things. Now we also look at the gate 37 as the gate of the mouth. It's the gate of feeding people. It's the gate of eating together. And that's how you have a community. Well, maybe Mars doesn't want to sit down and have, a meal with people, and you invite them out to, there's all these little nuances, but I think that we could have keywords are really key.
I'm laughing because gate 37 is my Chiron, and my daughter's home. She's a manifester. And I think I was telling you before we got on, my husband has the hanging gate 21 on Open Will Center, and the arguments about, is she going to eat? Going on. And
there you go.
Having to learn to back up for what she's going to eat. He wants her to eat. She's 23 years old. And then the funny thing is that, I can sit and look at this all through the lens of the family. And it's the same dang thing that he was always frustrated with his mom. Mom, I'm a grown man. I know what to eat. I can take
exactly. Yeah. And we continue on, right?
Right. Yeah. Right. So, but yeah, then that Mars energy is just very intense energy. And so right now your YouTube channel is completely devoted to the transits, right? I don't remember seeing you have it. I know you have some older videos that you've done about like the profile lines and different things. And I really love the way you explain things. So if anybody has not checked out Denise's YouTube channel, I highly recommend it. And
thank you.
Maybe when it's all over, you can put a link to it in the comments. But right now, what you're recording is always pretty much transit related, isn't it?
It is, and what I've decided that lately, I want to expand it a little bit more and sort of bring in world events and sort of talk about that. I think that there's a lot of interesting things because for me, it really, and I mean, I think my husband will be happy to hear this because I always tell him about the transits and do you see this happening? This is happening because of such and such gate, and he's very much like, yeah, okay, thanks so much, and he just kind of moves on. But having said that, it'll be nice to be able to explore that, like just certain things, like for instance, the global environment of politics, and which is one of those most polarizing things. But if you kind of put the human design spin to it and realize how the energy it works in human design and how those energies work together, connecting to money, to being liked, to disapproval, all those types of things because of the logical energy, it all becomes more reasonable, I guess, in a way, or you get to see that it is not just this I have an opinion and you don't have an opinion that matters, those types of things. And even looking at the gate 17 and saying, this is what we have a lot of this situation where people are saying my opinion is more important than yours. But when we look at the gate 17 opinions and say this is about an unproven hypothesis, so it's nothing that is actually true, so everybody's opinion isn't really true until it's been proven and tested and become a fact, and we move through the whole circuitry of how we work with human design. So that will be something I'll be doing. So it'll be I'll always be doing the transits because I think that they're really important, and I think that they can really help us understand the world around us. But I also like to I want to bring in this idea of the world around us and how it is you can explain it through human design. And I think when you can explain something that looks foreign to you, or the way the world is acting foreign, like if we look at since 2020, how things have changed so much, and you think, okay, well, what's happening? And then if you look at the whole 2027 concept of this theoretical shifting of the global cycle, you look at the perspective of the cross of planning and how it is starting to degrade, and you see that in the world around you. So even if you don't know a lot about human design, to be able to say, there is an explanation for this, and this might be something you see as you move forward. And if you see it, don't get worried, because this is part of the progress of how we are evolving into something new.
Yeah. Well, I was so focused. I'm like, oh, wait, okay. So you paused and I'm like, it's just funny to observe myself now when I'm really listening, because I used to always be so worried about not having a question, I wouldn't really listen. And then now I'm really listening and I'm like, oh, keep going. Right. But I really like listening to the way your mind works, but I do understand that for, that this is a different level of interpreting through human design than a lot of people are working with. And so we tend to, and I feel like this is very open ajna, open head center kind of stuff, right? Like it's contemplative, almost not really in a Gene Keys way, but similar. And I feel like there is this, I'm also noticing that you have the 47, I have the 64. So we still don't connect to the throat, but we have that defined head and ajna, so finding lots of inspiration together. But so I'm going to switch gears a little bit because I didn't have a real question about that. It was really interesting. But one of the things I've noticed in your chart that you and I share that I'm feeling drawn to talk about is you have these 59, 55 as your conscious sun and earth. And I have the 59, 55 as my design sun and earth. So I have the 59-2 and the 55-2. I also have a 59-6, but mine is, I think I have the 59 3 times, and I think the 59-6 is by Mars. So I have a lot of Mars energy in my chart. I'm very immature and aggressive per projector. Oh. I'm just teasing. Yeah. But so I'm just wondering because 59 and 55 are part of the new global cycle we're moving into as well.
Mm-hmm. Cross of the Phoenix, sleeping Phoenix.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes. And so I'm just curious if you can talk a little bit about how you see those energies, like the faith and the intimacy, and how that's personal for you. Like,
I will take the intimacy out of, because I think what happens with the gate 59 is there's so many lines to it. But when we get to the sixth line, it's always going to be different. It's not going to be the same as everybody else. It's like you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're going to have that theme of whatever that gate is. You get to the sixth line and you're already looking at the next gate, right? So the gate 59 line 6 that we're moving into for this global cycle is this concept of breaking barriers, literally breaking barriers. And when you look at the gate 55 line 6, breaking barriers to sharing your spirit with the world, to abundance of spirit. So in other words, we're stopping this, because let's be clear, right now, in this world we live in, there are a lot of people who don't love themselves, a lot of people who don't even like themselves, a lot of people who we could even say hate themselves. And so what we want to do is break the barrier to that level of, let's see who you are in real, as opposed to that cloak of invisibility that you wear that is trying to align with that person's truth or that person's truth or that person's truth. And I always say, this be authentic, but some people say, well, that's a slogan, but it isn't a slogan. It is about being happy with being you, not having to constrain yourself or fit yourself in a box because somebody wants you to, or that feels more comfortable for somebody else. And if somebody doesn't feel comfortable with your energy, then they're not for you. And I think that's the biggest thing that we don't understand. It is about fractals. And I know that's a human design term, so we'll just keep it as in, when we come to this world, we have people who are part of our group, they're our people. They understand us. They see us for who we are, especially with things that you could say more challenging energies, where some people say the gate 39, for instance, like that might be a little bit more challenging. I have a son who's got the 59, 39, 55, and he,
me,
he's very impactful. He's got a large personality. He's got a wide open throat as well. And so he has a big energy. And I always tell him, the people that get you are your people. And if people who don't understand you, who get frustrated by you, who don't like your energy, they're not your people. And don't put more, see, that's what we do as a society. We put more energy into the haters and less energy into the people who want to be with us, who like us, who are cool with who we are. And that's like another thing. It's like you're trying to get somebody to be, oh, will you be my friend even though you don't really like me? And maybe, no, but there's like 20 other people saying, yeah, we want to be your friend. And you're putting all this energy. You'll see this in comments, like even YouTube comments. You'll see that one really mean comment and it'll get a lot of traction because we try and, switch it. We want to switch that person's perspective and say, oh, you should like me. And the way I look at it is, when I talk about human design, if you're not interested in human design and you don't like human design and you tell me, you know what, human design is absolute garbage, I'll say, okay, cool, that's fine. We don't have to talk about it. I don't take offense to that, because I feel like we all can have our own part of the world to talk about what we want to talk about, to be ourselves and not have to conform to anybody. And if you don't like human design, I'm cool with that. But if you want to hear about it, I will talk your ear off.
Yeah. And that's really important. And it's interesting too. I'm looking at your chart while we're talking too, and I'm noticing you have this open G center with the hanging gate 13. And I have a defined G, but I have the gate 13. That's my Saturn gate, and I have the 13-1, which you have in it's my conscious moon, and you have it as your design unconscious moon. And so really, like, the way that you're listing and the stories that you tell, when and how you let that impact who you are, is super important. And I just recently told this somewhere else, so if people have heard this, bear with me. But I love to tell this the idea of the first time I tried peach ice cream and how much I loved peach ice cream. And I met many people who said, oh, it's just so peachy. And I thought, could you imagine if peach ice cream tried to be less peachy because some people thought it was less peachy? And I was like, oh, I moved from Chicago to Georgia, tried some peach ice cream. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing, right? But somebody else is like, nah, whatever. So, why would you make your peach ice cream to appeal to the person who says it's too peachy, right?
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
Be your own peach ice cream. And I have that 1/8. And so the 8, for sure, I've always felt like I can see where I was copying people, doing all these things. And I loved when I added the gene key layers and I realized that there was something that he says in the 8 where he says, as soon as you start to imitate anyone, you slip back into mediocrity.
That's
And
right. Yes.
yeah. And so I don't know. It's really interesting when you start to look at this through the idea of really being radically authentic and all those things have become these catchphrases that are kind of feel almost like spiritual bypassing, which I know you talk about in your book.
Yeah.
So how do you suggest people avoid that spiritual bypass feeling? If you can talk about that a little bit.
I think that I think that what happens with spirituality, I know that this was a part of my path, and this was long before I ever had human design, because before I had human design, I was always searching for something. When I found human design, or it found me, whatever you want to say, it was like I found something, and it was that thing I had been looking for my whole life. And I know that sounds kind of a little bit
No,
hokey
I'm
in
a
some
6
way.
too also, so I totally understand. That's a big
Yeah, but it's that thing that you've been looking for. And so I went through all the spiritual books. The one person that I really liked was Doreen Virtue. I came from a Catholic family who said that tarot and all that stuff was all the work of the devil. And so trying to find a path in that wasn't going to offend, with my open G, because we want to be liked and everything should be good. uh, Doreen Virtue provided oracle cards and angel cards that it felt like, okay, well, this is angels. We can work with angels, and angels are good. We'll be good with this. So I went through her work. She's disavowed it since then, but having said that, she was a good stepping stone for me. I also did Wayne Dyer's work, Carolyn Miss, and all the people that were kind of in that new age, they called it at that point. And the bottom line was that I found that it was all kind of leading me towards human design, and it was all leading me to express myself. But the one thing that I've always had an issue with is that if I can't be myself and say what I need to say, I really have a problem with that. And so when I talk about, speaking my truth or saying whatever I want to say, that has always been something that I've gotten my fingers wrapped for telling people the truth or what I thought or those types of things. And it wasn't always opinions. It was like the truth, the elephant in the room. Oh, look at that. That's there. And people didn't always like that. So the spiritual bypassing is this idea of being so elevated where you think that you'll never get angry. You'll never, think bad thoughts. You'll never do bad things, whatever that is. Like maybe you cut in front of somebody at the checkout, and because you're in a rush and you want to do it, and that's the moment, like, you don't feel that peace and serenity to be that nice person at that moment. And I think that when you realize that you're going to be a human being no matter what, and if you're 99% of the time, or even 95% of the time, you're being the best version of you, bringing that best version, and that other 5% or 1% that you sometimes snap. And I had young kids at that time, 3 kids, and they were like really young, like all within they were like within 3 years. I had 3 kids, so it was a lot of kids at one time, and they were all very busy. And not to get upset by trying to be that spiritual person, and and also this idea of like not really connecting with the world in a way where you are actively participating, as opposed to saying God's going to bring, and you can call God, universe, spirit, divine, whatever you want to say, will bring me everything I need. And yes, that is true, but we actively have to be looking as well. We have to be participating in life as well, as opposed to, you can sit and meditate and sort of do that in a long-term situation. You could be like in as a monk or something like that, but that is actually still a job. So even if you're meditating all the time and that is your job to bring your spirituality to the world, it is a job. So we all have to look at how we can participate in the world. But then there's also the strategic part of it where we don't always fall into the strategic part. Like for me, my whole storyline is passive. So in other words, that was another thing, chasing after success. When success is, or what does success even mean? What does it even mean to be successful in this or successful in that, or do this well, or be known for this, or whatever. And that I really look back to when I was trying to get into the writing world. You know, how could I be somebody who was seen for my work, and not necessarily seen for my work, but really being able to make a living on my work. And that was like a big deal. But also to realize that you can do as much as you can, but then surrender is part of it too. So finding balance, really. You know, I know I'm kind of running around the circle, but everything that happens, you can't just, everything that happens in your life, if you say, well, that's just the way it is, and I'm just going to be passive about it, and I'm not going to interact with the world, I'm not going to change, I'm just going to be so spiritual and you know, be above it all. Like if someone's coming at you and they're being nasty to you and they're saying things that aren't true, you have to say, no, that's not true. And you have to stand your ground, because you're not here as somebody who's a spiritual person to be walked over. You are here to be strong and empowered.
Well, you certainly aren't.
Speak your
You're
truth.
the whole defense circuit.
Exactly.
Don't cross me. She's going to come at you. I can see that in your chart.
Well, I will not come at anybody unless there's a good reason. Like I will tell you right now, I will always negotiate with people and talk about people. I don't know, with my children, I have an issue in that I am very defensive about, you know, anything coming around my children. That is something I know, and you can't shut that off. That is there.
Yeah, you got that 50-27.
Yeah, that is
Mama
really
bear.
key. Yeah, huge mama bear. But ultimately, you know, spiritual bypassing, I think is just about people kind of looking down at other people for being a human. And that's what I sometimes look at. And I think we're all going to be human. We're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to have bad days, and be okay with that, and be kind to yourself, and understand that this is just part of your whole transition. And we evolve and we get better, and life gets better the more we're in tune with the idea. Yeah, you know, yesterday maybe I yelled at my kids, and maybe that was really mean of me. But today I'm apologizing to them, and I'm changing my shift. I'm shifting into something else, as opposed to, I will never lie to them. I will never yell at my kids. I will never be upset. I will never do anything wrong. And that we can't do that. It's human. We're going to snap at some point. It's just life, right?
Right. Especially when you have a completely open root center, right?
Not so much now. I've got the 360 activated. I've got a lot of energy activated now.
Okay. That's true. Yeah, I've really been, you know, it was funny because when you were talking, we were talking before about the whole idea of when this person said, oh, you don't really know much, and you felt like you knew a lot. And I know I went the opposite route of like feeling like I knew a lot because I'd studied all the traditional human design, and then getting that added layer of going into quantum human design and the more empowered language and whatever. I think part of that just is there takes a certain amount of time before you really integrate whatever it is we know. Like we can know stuff and tell other people, but until we really can start to, you know, move into that, I guess, almost passenger consciousness type thing, or Robin Wynn calls it the witnessing observer. I like that term. I don't know if you've ever heard it, but to where, you know, I can say, you know, for example, you're talking about yelling at your kids, where I can say, oh, isn't it interesting? I just totally lost my shit on my daughter right now, even after all this work I've done, you know?
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting how that still happens? I wonder what that's all about. And then letting it go, right?
Yeah.
Putting the question out there and letting the answers come to me or not, knowing that everything is happening for me. And, you know, it's not always good. Sometimes it sucks in the moment while it's happening, but it's happening for my greatest expansion if I allow it. And the more that I resist it, the more it persists and has to get louder and nastier and whatever. And so I think that there was this idea that I had in the beginning that that it would just be this easy, like logical path of understanding the mechanics and kind of following it, and I'm saying kind of because it's always been hard. I am not, my chart, I felt very affirmed when I had like an online webinar I was in with Bella Crystal. I don't know if you know who she is, and Ashley Nicole. They do this Unlock Human Design. I think it was. They were looking at my chart to look at something they were doing just for people who was on. It was, and all of a sudden they went, "Oh wow, this is a really interesting projector. I bet you don't even feel like a projector." And I was like, "Oh my God, I feel so validated because I've got every gate of the will center defined. I have the 2644. I have 3 motors. I have the 1-8 defining my throat as a split, so it's so much like I process everything. So to tell me that I can't talk until somebody tells me that I can talk I was stuck in so much bitterness for so long because I kept doing it and then beating myself up for not following the rules. But it was like I had to process when I'm a triple split. I had to connect with other people in aura and then verbally process. And to tell me that I had to wait till they gave me permission to do it, which is just crazy, right? To me, it was like, all right. So yeah, I just found that the whole process is I think more about time, like rather than, and I do think it's important to have multiple perspectives on human design. I noticed in your book, you kept saying things like, I don't remember just to paraphrase, things like taking what resonates, or if this, leave this if it doesn't. And I do think that is really important because our inner authority is our inner authority, not, human design is not our inner authority, right?
No, of course not. We're always human.
Yeah. And so that whole aspect of needing to follow somebody's rules. But then you have people who say, well, then what's the point? Right? If this isn't because they want to be certain that this is the way you do it. I want this to be my map.
But there's no certainty because
right.
I can tell you that you have this authority or you have this type or you have whatever, but you have to look at every different gate inside and say, okay, what's inside there? And how does it feel? How can I feel empowered with what I have in my chart? So if I look at my chart, a lot of times when I first started human design, I was like, oh gosh, wouldn't it be great to have like the 214? Because that's like luck, right? Because that's like things coming in and or a defined will center. Because then people are they feel empowered by you, or they're going to potentially pick you over somebody else for a job or those types of things. And so you look at all these things and you're like, oh, wouldn't it be better if I had such and such? And then you realize that it's all perfect the way it is because you are who you are. And human design is not about trying to fit yourself into the chart. It's really about finding yourself and say, oh yeah, that's something I do. And maybe I don't like the way I do that. Maybe I can change that. And maybe I like the way I do this and I can do more of it. And so it is really about being inspired by the chart in that you can see those parts of you and say, wow, this stuff works. But not to ever change your path. Like I find that a lot of people say, well, is that the not self? Is that the not self? Am I doing that because it's not self? And I'd say, no. Does it feel okay for you? So for instance, for me, the gate 44 was something I was conditioned by my mom. And I mean, I used to do, I think I probably got away from it. But when I was younger, I would do sales pitches and things that were very, very connected with the gate 44. And I think it does kind of fade away as you get out of that aura. But was that bad? No. I mean, you can have an imprint of an energy of an open gate and be complete, or an open center, and be okay with it, as long as you're using that energy to benefit you, right? Not to the point where you're going to bring yourself out. And I know, I mean, I literally have been having a transit of Saturn for a lot of last year, part of last year, and some of this year, where I got a defined will, and I literally burnt myself out. I didn't realize it. So, that's really what it is, that you have to look at the energy and say, okay, well, I'm doing too much. I don't know how to use this will center. This is not my regular energy. And so I have to figure out how I can, work with it. So I'm staying healthy, because I ended up getting, and I never get sick. I hadn't been sick in about 4 years. And I ended up getting sick like twice in like 3 months. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm burning myself out. So, but it was great because it was a learning tool for me to realize that these transits are very impactful. Using the energy to your advantage, I could get a lot more done. I could write a lot more. I could do a lot more things. And on the other hand, of saying, okay, that's enough. You've done enough. Now you just stand back and you let because work to rest, right? The wheel center has to have the rest. But if you don't know how to use that energy, you're just like, I'm just going through it. I'm continuing to do it. So that's why, just learning all those little tidbits of things to really empower you to just be the best version of yourself, to be able to have the energy to do the things you want to do, and to just get out there and do what feels correct. And basically, the biggest thing that we need to do is humanity, especially generator types, because we are apparently supposed to be the ones creating the aura, is to be happy in the things we do. At least be happy with something in our lives. And if that comes in, we're going to just increase the generalized aura for everybody. And that's a better world to live in than the world that is not so empowering right now. But again, all we have to do is, as though it's so simple, but it's just about trying to find happiness within yourself. And it's small. There's a song by Jewel, "My hands are small, but they still, can do something." It's a very old song, but I really love that song because it says, you have a very small voice, you have a very small, aura, but everybody who can, just increase it a little bit, turn it up a little bit. And I don't mean inauthentic. I mean something that feels correct for you, that feels good. And just feel happy and go outside and look at the sky or whatever and say, wow, this is a beautiful world we live in, or have a meal and just feel really good that really tastes nice. And just to have that energy, and it's like a feeling of bliss. And no matter how long it lasts, it's like that moment of, yes, this is great. And that energy it's emanating from you to other people, and it just continues on. And this is how we can change the world, one person at a time, in a small, small way.
Yes. That is the beauty of the sacral, right? Says yes, or it says no. And then
Exactly.
mind makes up a story why you should do the opposite, right?
Yeah. Oh,
But,
yeah.
Yeah. So, that's great. And that's when, for a long time, and I still some days have a little bit of sacral envy. I'm like, oh, if I just had that easy way to ask my sacral. But what I'm really realizing now, 7.5 years later, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's right. It's supposed to be fun. And projectors are here to master systems. So how can I make systems that make things more fun?
There you go.
Right? It makes a big difference, instead of how can I prove that I can do as much or more than a generator type, and how can I use my will, which, talking about burnout, I have, so my Jupiter is in gates 51 and 21. And I have no gallbladder.
Oh.
Which is gate 51 is the gallbladder, right? And I'm like, that was gone before I even found human design. So, the whole proving myself. I did learn a while ago, even before human design. And as soon as I read about gate 51, I was like, that makes so much sense. I did learn that I could not keep going and doing traditional group workouts that I used to think I loved to do, because they would motivate me to do so much more than I would do on my own.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah. And I would think people come home from the gym and they're like all ready to go, and yeah, they're generator types. I would go to the gym. I would be in some, class, especially if it had music. But I remember I'd be in these classes where they would have us do suicides, right? The little at the end. And here's me, the projector with the defined will. And I know that if you put me in any kind of a running situation, I'm not a runner, I'm not fast. And I would always be at the end, I'd be dying, but I would always be right up there with people that were much more fit than me in those situations. And then I'd come home, I would make everything I could find to eat, and I would lay on the couch, and I would, and this is when I had a kid at home too, and she'd be coming over and bugging me, "Mom, I'm so tired." And she's a manifester, and we don't define the sacral together. So it was often so yeah, I learned that was not the way to work out for me, because I just would use that willpower and kill myself.
Yeah, and that's what you found through human design, which was really
Yeah.
powerful. When you think about it, you just say, "Well, this isn't for me." But I
Yeah.
knew that.
But I kept trying.
But something showed me that what I've always known is true. And
Yeah.
so I think that is one of those things that I love, those aha moments where you get this click and you go, "Oh, well, that's why this has been something that I've struggled with or something that hasn't worked for me." And I kind of always thought, well, shouldn't I be everybody but everybody else? I mean, they all say it's great. It's like even diets, for instance, everybody say, "Oh, well, keto's so great," or this is so great, or that's so great, but it's not great for everybody. Everybody
Right.
has their own way of being. And I think that is the best part of human design. It is so unique, and it says that you are unique, and that's what you're here to be. You're not supposed to mute any part of you. You know,
Yeah.
it's part of expressing yourself as you are. And again, it sounds like a slogan, sounds like a cliche. So, like I'm thinking I've got to come up with some different wording so people realize that I'm not trying to just get on the bandwagon with everybody else and say, be authentic, whatever. No, I mean, look at who you are and say, okay, maybe somebody told me I wasn't supposed to do this, or I wasn't supposed to do that, or it wasn't good enough for that, or I couldn't be that person, or like some people say, well, that their parents never told them they couldn't be this. You could never be that. That's not who you are. But maybe you felt like you were that person. And a lot of people will just let go of it and say, no, I'm not going to be that person. And always have that regret in the back of their mind that said, what if I had have done that? What if I had to just push forward, and they told me not to do it, but what if I had have? And that
What if I
creates.
do it now? That's
Exactly.
my big
But that
thing, is it's
creates
never
that
too late.
regret. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I look at life as no regrets. Whatever you can do, do. And if it's beyond your time, okay. If you always wanted to be an Olympic runner, well, maybe you can't be when you're 65. But what can you be? Can you do a marathon? Where you feel empowered that you've done something, or something like that. Like
There's probably
Olympics
some senior
runners.
Olympics or something that,
There's probably
there's a version
something.
of it. Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
don't let it go. Don't let that go. Like, I know that I will never be an astronaut because I can't take G-force. I mean, put me on one of those G-force really crazy roller coasters and I'm throwing up. It's not to be gross, but I
Yeah.
literally cannot do it. So I will never be an astronaut, and I'm cool with that. But there are things that I can do. And what are those things? And how do I feel inspired to do them?
And so what is it? I'm thinking of, there is something I was reading about that, about the limitations, where when we are, what energy am I thinking of, where it talks about, oh, that's the 63, where it's the 60 and the 3, where it's through the limitations that we have, we find the mutations, right? So maybe you can't be a traditional astronaut, but maybe
Exactly.
you discover some new way to experience something similar that, only existed because of your now finding this at too old of an age to do whatever it is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Very, very well said. Exactly. That's
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah. And I think, I also think it's very easy to fall into that victim mindset of, it's too late. Somebody
Yeah.
else did this to me. And
Yeah.
I'm not trying to say that somebody didn't do something to you, but, I know that I am very fortunate to be able to have done what I've done. I'm not saying it would be as easy for someone else, but I started a business a couple of days before my 58th, or like a week before my 58th birthday. I started a new business. I started a podcast, like actually officially made it a podcast at 60 years old. I'd never done a podcast before. I am doing things that, my background is retail fashion. I worked in stores and I knew how to use a little bit of computer stuff, but I was always the interface with the customer or with the product and merchandising. And I did not have a lot of computer skills or that sort of thing. And I've had a lot of learning through this whole journey in learning how to do it. And it was really, at the beginning, easy to say, it's too hard. I don't know how to do this. And I kept stopping. It's too hard. I don't know how to do this. And then finally I said, I am worth investing in getting the help I need to learn how to do this. And then once I started doing that, I was like, oh, I'm actually pretty smart at this. I can, now that they're starting to show me these things, I can learn more and more. And so it's when we start to do more, we learn more. And human design has really helped me to see where my tendencies to project on other people. Well, I can't do this because my husband won't like it, and he's going to have a fit if I spend the money on it. And you know what I mean? We
Yeah.
make stories that energy, where we put the energy, we reinforce, right?
Absolutely. We make it our truth, even though it isn't true. So we believe it. And I think that I think for you it's cool because that you are going so like fast forward this year. Especially with Uranus going to be moving into the gate 8. I the beginning of the year I said, this is the time for a lot of new people to rise to the forefront, to be seen for the gifts they can give, to be themselves, to not try and be like anybody else, to be that unique individual. And I think it's perfect timing. Like obviously it's always this guidance. We're always getting a guidance that kind of pull to push us towards something. And when we had the connection with the nodal cycle that finished up sort of the beginning of January and at the end of 2023, it was a lot of endings and changing things and saying, okay, I can't sit here anymore. I can't sit in this pain and regret anymore. I have to move. And nobody can move you. You have to move yourself. And to like I said, to live with regrets your whole life, and to, what is it, the death of the salesman, that is like the best representation of why didn't I do what I should have done? Why didn't I try at least? And I think that is one of the things that we can give ourselves as a gift, because we all deserve it. We're here for a reason. We're not here to feel regret and sad and uninspired and unempowered. We're here to feel like we have something to give to the world, whatever it is.
Yeah, that's really well said. And, I've really started to notice in the last couple of years how my body talks to me and tells me things.
Oh, yes, of course, yeah.
So many times we are, society has taught us, you have a pain, find a pill, and I'm
No.
not saying that there aren't times where we need medicine, right? But most of the time we need to get curious about, why is it this particular pain? Why is it this particular disease? Whatever this is, right? And I remember right before I made the decision to get help to start the business, because I had said I was going to start a YouTube channel. That was where it first started before I started my business. I was like, I'm going to start a YouTube channel. And I went and I started to do, I don't know, there was something I didn't know how to do with setting up the channel. I never even got to the point of recording anything because I was so, and I also have realized recording by myself doing something doesn't really work well for me. I do much better, in this situation where I'm having a conversation with someone. So when I was trying to do all that alone, it was just awkward. But there was one day that I woke up and I was having some problems with constricted airway. It's a long story, whatever. But I woke up after another miserable night's sleep, and I have something in my chart. I don't know, I can't think of it right now, but there's something in my chart that is very much about me getting things while I'm in my dreams. Neptune, right? So, anyway, we all have Neptune in our chart.
Any head gates, of course, can do that too.
Yes. Yes. Well, I have gate 64 is Pluto. So transformation through questions. But so I woke up this one morning and literally this download dropped in that said, are you going to choose to live? Because you're choosing to die by not choosing to live.
Wow.
I just had this visual of my channel 1-8, voice of inspiration, as my constricted airway, right?
Yeah.
And I just knew I needed to use my voice and do something. So, and it's I'm also doing things too. So I don't want to say that like it's always, so I definitely have a better airway, but I still have to drink a lot of water while we're talking.
Well, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think, but that is like huge, like to have to have that kind of an inspired view of your truth. It really is like it's, and to be able to be in a place where you can actually listen to it, because those are scary words, really scary words. And so it's like the universe saying, okay, you have an opportunity to step out into the light. What are you waiting for? Let's do this. And this is what you do. And there are a lot of people that will say, oh, well, it's too hard. I can't do this. I can't do that. And I say to them, nothing is too hard if it really feels like it's coming from the place of inside of you, your heart, your passion, your desire, what you want. And even if you don't know what your heart, passion, desire is, the only way you're going to find it is by exploring. That's how you find your light. And it's always in there, but it's almost like you need something like something to turn it on to really get that because it's like a pilot light that's ready to get ignited full throttle at any point, but you have to be out there looking.
So I'm just noticing a comment here, but I do have something else I want to add. So I noticed Lynn says, I've heard there are trains of thought that believe in different realms. We are those people, and there isn't any what ifs. That part of our dimensional world, we did do the thing that we wanted to do. Another version of us, this word that I've come across lately, doppelganger, and we can go see it in our dreams, or it comes to us in our dreams from the other realm. Yeah, like quantum jumping and the idea that we exist in all these other dimensions, I think is what you're talking about, Lynn. And so sometimes we get bits of those parts of ourselves coming to us through our dreams, and I totally believe that that's true. I don't know if you have anything that you want to say on that.
I don't. I've had a lot of dreams lately, but yeah, I think that's really interesting. The one thing that I've seen is sometimes it was many years ago, where sometimes just looking in a mirror and looking at yourself and going, "Well, that's not who you are. That's not like." It's almost like you kind of have an out of body experience where you see yourself in a different way. And is that from another, like timeline that you're tapping into? There's a lot of really cool things to think about. And you could get stuck in the contemplation of life in a lot of ways, and it's fun to do. But nobody can really say what it is or isn't, only that we can believe in what feels correct for us.
I just noticed we're getting close to the top of the hour, and I haven't even asked you. I really want to know, with all your stuff you've been talking about with the eclipse, how will you be spending the time where do you live? I forget, Denise.
Just outside of Toronto. So I'm actually in the total eclipse zone. So we have our glasses, and we'll have to be looking at it a little bit. Although everybody says, I hope they're not counterfeit. Well, I did all the tests, so hopefully. But yeah, this is eclipse. I mean, I look at this eclipse as a big event in one way, but I also look at the perspective of the changing of Pluto and Neptune coming up. And that to me is like the eclipse feels like it's kind of a transition into that energy. And if you look at the 2551 is going to be activated by the nodes and also Neptune, and that's going to be activated for quite a while. What that's really telling us is that this is what we're going to be looking at when we move into 2027 too, because as much as we have the cross of the sleeping phoenix, we also have the cross of penetration. That's the other sort of cross, because they come in two. Like right now, we're in the cross of planning and the cross of the Maya. So it just feels like it's really showing us a path. Now, the gate 25 is one of those energies that is connected to the gate 46 too, because of the opposition. And when you talk about, you're listening to your body, I mean, this is where we need to move forward. We really need to listen to our bodies. That's the whole premise of human design. Our bodies know what we need. If I've been lost before, I mean, I told this story quite a few times, and I'll be very quick about it. But it was like I used to live in Thailand. I used to teach English back in many years ago, and I remember one time I went to do a tutoring of a young person, and I was coming home, and I went on a bus, and I thought it was the right bus, but it's all written in Thai, so the language obviously is not something I knew. And I got on the wrong bus, and I went to this place that I didn't know at all. And I was like in this downtown area. I didn't know anybody. Payphones were not really working. They didn't have that. I mean, there was nothing like cell phones because it was quite a while ago. And I just started to walk. It's like my body just started to push me forward. I started to walk. And I was crossing the road, and I was walking, and I continued to walk. I didn't know anything. I didn't know where I was. And suddenly, in the blue, in the sea of people, I see the only two people other than my husband that I knew in Thailand, in Bangkok. They were our friends. It was my husband's best friend and his wife. They were going to eat sushi at a restaurant. And literally I saw them, and we went to have sushi. I mean, so it was like one of those moments of my body took me where I needed to go. I have no explanation other than it was really cool.
My sister lives in Thailand.
Yeah, it's a great place.
Yeah, it's fun, but I could imagine, Bangkok is pretty crazy place to get. I wouldn't want to be like completely disoriented there. When I was there,
That's
we
where I
already had
was.
cell phones, so I was there in 2000.
Yeah.
So she's in Chiang Mai now is where she lives, but um
Oh, up north. Yeah.
yeah, so but trusting that a lot of times, we know what to do. We know, and when we can follow that, and we don't get the chatter in our own mind, and even more so the chatter from everybody else telling us, why are you doing what you're doing? Right? That's
Yeah.
not the right thing to do. That's not what I would do. That's not what. And so my word this year has been trust. The last few years I've been picking a word, and this year my word is trust. And I've been so leaning into just that idea of I'll know what I need to know when I need to know it. Everything is happening for me, all of these things. And even just, things as extreme as my daughter having a car accident last week, which I, don't want to go into all the details. Like literally, like as we're going there and I knew she was okay, I was like, something good is going to come from this, or something important at least. It might not be good in the moment, but something is. And so just really, and it was not even a like, oh, let me convince myself and spiritual bypass. It was this download that just said something.
Yes. Yes.
And I even said to
Exactly.
her last night, I said, you know what? It was so nice to have you here tonight. She was going to go home. And I was like, it was so nice to have you here to make this meal that we wouldn't have made. I'm so,
Yeah.
I'm sorry how it happened, but I just like, we had such a fun time cooking together. So I wanted to ask, how can people connect with you, Denise, if they want to work with you? Are you working with individuals right now? I know you've got your great YouTube channel, but
no, I'm not working with individuals. I'm fully working on working on another book. And I'm going to be expanding my YouTube channel, but yeah, they can check out my YouTube channel. I do have a website as well. They can check that out. I have some freebies that you can get there. Right now, no, I'm not working with the one-on-one, but maybe in the future, some classes
we'll
or
put
something.
that in the show notes and you can put it in the comments in the Facebook group. But what, for those who are just listening and might not be able to, but what is your YouTube is Denise
Denise.Mathew, yeah, and it's Mathew with one T.
Right.
That's the different part. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'll try and figure out how to put it in the comments.
Okay. If you can't figure it out, you can
I'll do my best because I don't know how to do it, but I'll try and figure it out.
Yeah, Denise doesn't really do Facebook. And
No.
the book is called The Mandala of Life, 384 Lines to Self-Discovery with Human Design. And it is a fantastic book. I'm really enjoying what I've been reading so far. I've got it on Kindle, and it's one of those where I'm already thinking, do I need to get the paper copy too?
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I love having the Kindle because it allows me to sometimes copy and paste stuff into my own notes, when I'm looking at things in ways that I like to do.
And keywords too. Like I find you can just put in a word, okay, gate, blah, blah, blah. And then you go, it takes you right there. So yes, I agree. It is pretty nice to have that.
Okay. So yeah, it's a great book. I highly recommend it. So, and you're working, what is the new one you're working on yet? Does it have,
I would say that it's everything that I couldn't put in the first book, because literally the first book was at the maximum. It said you can't do any more than this, because it was like, it's like so dense. It's 826 pages. So it's a lot of work. And so now but I will probably be bringing in the planetary transit stuff and how you can use it for your own life. Like, if you want to, track your own transits and how can you work with it, and how it might sort of impact you based on if you have a defined center, like dormant gates, things that are very important to your life.
Yeah. Awesome. So every week we share stories of how my guests have come to understand themselves in a more loving and empowering way through the lens of human design. How you think and speak about yourself matters. Human design can show you the reframe of not only your own story, but the story you tell yourself about your relationships. If you're ready to start living a better story, I'd love to help guide you through the process of fully embodying who you came here to be. I invite you to follow Real Human Design Stories on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform, and would love so much if you could take a moment and give me a 5-star review if that feels aligned. To work with me directly, you can set up a free discovery chat at kathybashanko.com. Thanks so much, Denise. I really enjoyed chatting with you today.
Thank you too. I really appreciate being here. It's been really fun.
Great. So peace out, everyone.